The Megaman Anniversary Collection is a 2004 compilation of the Complete Works remastered NES games. This collection also had Megaman 7 and 8, as well as the two arcade fighting games, Megaman The Power Battle and Megaman 2 The Power Fighters. It's like a loaded potato compared to what we get on one disc these days, huh? Regardless, I'm here to give the Anniversary Collection the credit it deserves, where it falls short, but how it's still one of the most comfortable ways to play the NES games specifically, in my opinion. I respect your time enough to not waste it by telling you in excruciating detail on what Complete Works is, because I made a whole video about that 2 months ago. If you want to learn about those versions of the NES games in detail, watch that video, as this one's more of a sequel to that video, but I'll give you the abridged version today so you can just follow along. Like I said, Complete Works is a 6-disc remaster of the NES games on the PlayStation 1. It sported graphical improvements in the form of more vibrant and saturated colors. It fixed issues such as sprite flickering, laggy slowdowns via sprite limitations, screen tearing, hitbox corrections, and game-breaking glitches like the majority of zips in Mega Man 2. I'll explain all of this in better detail later, since there are some things I left out in the first video that I should have mentioned. Complete Works had a Navi mode where characters like Roll, Dr. Light, Kalinka, and others provided tips and tricks. The tips are actually pretty decent if you're new to Mega Man. But these remasters were Japanese only, so rest in peace English speakers. Navi mode replaced the original music with remixed soundtracks, as well as cosmetic improvements like prettier pause menus and Mega Man 8 like health and energy bars. The most important implementation in Complete Works though is the weapon hot swapping, which allows you to switch special weapons, utility items, rush and beat, and Mega Man 6 transformations with just a simple click of the back trigger buttons. The Anniversary Collection was the answer English speakers were looking for with these games. Atomic Planet, the dev crew in charge of this compilation, was tasked with translating Complete Works and making it more accessible for us folks. This was amazing. We received all the perks I mentioned just now, but translated and neatly packaged into one disc instead of this 6-disc abomination. Seriously, 6 discs? I love these remasters, but Christ, come on. For you meme lords out there who love regurgitating old jokes that aren't funny anymore, you'll hate that typos like Wile and Failed were fixed. I consider that a positive, personally. There's these cool screen transitions when you boot the game. You can manually navigate the Mega Man 8 sprite to doors, where you access the games, saving and loading, more on that later, options, and even secrets that you unlock by beating the games, picture sets, remixed music, and depending on which console you had it on, you'll even get the first episode of the Ruby Spears Mega Man cartoon, which was on the PS2 version. If you had the Xbox version, you get episode 1 of the Mega Man NT Warrior anime instead. The Xbox kinda lucked out there, personally. GameCube received nothing but a pretty mad G4 interview with Keiji Inafune, but I'm not gonna get into that here. Also, last video I was accused of not knowing a thing about the Anniversary Collection, despite the fact that I literally said in that same video that I withheld info for it on purpose for the sake of this video, but I digress. Some people just don't know how to pay attention. But I could only laugh at that because I literally have a physical copy right here that I've been playing on and off for 19 years. So yeah, I think I'm pretty qualified to talk about this and have my own thoughts, you know? I guess this is a good time to address GameCube in general though. I am going to take an L here and admit that I left out one crucial issue with the GameCube version in my Complete Works video, despite that short segment. If you're playing natively on an actual GameCube and no emulation, you have to cope with the fact that you can't remap the default controls. I'm sure someone can make the A and B buttons inverted work, but pretty sure 90% of people would not find that ideal. But I believe I made that blunder because I brought it up while looking at it through the lens of emulation, where you can brute force that remap with the emulation tools. I didn't consider anyone using the original disc and console without any accessories to fix it. Still, I left that out while enthusiastically recommending the GameCube version, and to which I apologize, because it certainly got the shortest end of the stick compared to PS2 and Xbox. It still had Navi mode, like I mentioned in the last video, but it doesn't have the remixed soundtrack and arcade music. Depending on your subjective opinion on the Navi mode remixes, that's probably not an issue for you. But to those who did want to play the game like this, you're kind of missing out on that little treat. Let's get into the sound quality next. Last video I said the sound quality was off in Complete Works. Well, I was half right about that for the Anniversary Collection. Don't get me wrong, the original NES music still sounds a bit muffled. I mean, it's not that bad to nitpick it so much. But Anniversary Collection fixed this sound mixing issue, sorta. There's volume control options in the Anniversary Collection, and you can freely adjust the sound effects and background music to whichever levels you desire, effectively fixing it yourself. Well, except for Mega Man 8, we'll get into that one later. You have to remember that these aren't just ports. These games were stripped down and rebuilt to incorporate things like weapon hot swapping, glitch and bug fixes, and the like, just like I said in the beginning of the video. That included giving the player volume control options. If you really wanted to, you can mute the BGM and play the game with your own background music if you're emulating or something. As someone who loves to listen to his own music as he's practicing for a run or wants to edit in custom BGM for videos, I can fall in love with that sort of option, but hey, some people aren't down with that and that's fine, to each their own. Before we continue on sound quality, we have to get into how dirty they did Mega Man 7 and 8 in this collection. Mega Man 1 and 6 had the treatment of kings because Complete Works did all the hard work for Atomic Planet, so anything involving 7 and 8 are all 100% on them, and they botched it. Well, maybe I'm exaggerating. Aside from the annoying slowdowns Mega Man 7 had in certain areas, it plays well. The ending credit scenes being completely scrapped, though, annoyed the shit out of me, though. Like, what is this tomfoolery? Apparently they had issues getting it to work before the deadline, so they just gave up and compromised with this? Okay, whatever. More nitpicks, I suppose, but you just don't mess with my Mega Man 7 ending screens, damn it. Mega Man 8 is more egregious. It doesn't suffer from any slowdowns, sure, aside from some weird audio skipping here and there, and like Mega Man 7, it plays pretty damn well. It doesn't use the superior Saturn version, though to be fair, every re-release of this game uses the damn PS1 version, so it's whatever. Even though I'm a massive simp for Mega Man 8, I grew up with the PlayStation 1 version, and even I can admit that Saturn's just a more complete experience with the extra content and slightly better music quality. And the superior Tangoman theme don't at me. But something really odd was done with the audio that, to this day, I still can't wrap my head around. Atomic Planet, you gave us volume control options to fix the audio mixing issues. Cool, so why in the hell are Mega Man 8 sound effects still natively too loud? This infamous ear-bleeding explosion from Grenade Man makes my heart want to burst out of its freaking prison no matter what sound effects setting I put it on. Mega Man 8 also has another anomaly, though this one can be explained. Remember how it had 3 save files in your original ROM? Well, because of how the autosave feature works universally throughout the entire collection, they scrapped the native save and load system of Mega Man 8. So they essentially robbed you of 2 save files in favor of the collection's single save system. Look, that's just stupid. In the end, these are still nitpicks, but it undeniably takes things away from the game that shouldn't be gone. I'm not a big fan of the Legacy collections, and I still prefer Anniversary, but at least the Legacies are ports from the original ROMs. I'm speaking more towards the casual audience on this one, since most people would love to have more than one save file. It doesn't bother me because I can speed through these games in a short session, and I don't need to save my game most of the time. But for those taking their sweet time and having fun, this hurts them a bit if they want to have multiple files to play with and bounce between. But hey, at least Mega Man 8's loading screens and transitions between the first and second halves of certain stages have been completely abolished. That makes the pacing better than every other version that's been re-released. This is a good time to get a bit more into the collection's autosave feature. After you complete a stage, the game will save it for you. You can still use passwords if you want, but it's a bit redundant unless you want to just skip around. My only gripe with it is that the autosaving's a bit on the slow and intrusive side, not as horrendous as a certain 3DX game, but it does stall you for a few seconds. Thankfully, you can turn it off before you start a game if you have a previous save file available. So this makes repeat playthroughs free from interruption. Once again, another nitpick that you can kinda ignore depending on the type of player you are. I've really got zero to say about the arcade games. They're just silly fun to pass time with. I never ran into technical issues with those, so they're about as good as they were on their native arcade machines. Moving on. Now, let's get into some glitches that the Complete Works had, or supposed glitches anyway. What some folks confuse as new glitches it created were actually stemming from hitbox corrections, specifically on Mega Sprite. One that got pointed out to me in the comments of the other video is during Airman's fight. One of his patterns is now supposed supposedly undodgeable because of the air shooters having a bigger hitbox. This is false. It's not the air shooters that have a bigger hitbox, it's Megaman's. More so, his hitbox extends accurately to the top of his helmet like it was supposed to be. Granted, his hitbox has been inconsistent as hell throughout all 6 NES games. In Mega Man 1, the hitbox expands outside his body by a couple of pixels. In Mega Man 4, it's aligned perfectly near the tip of his body, but it's still in bounds. In Mega Man 2, this tiny ass little box is the smallest it's been. Since I don't have any exact hitbox data from Anniversary Collection or the Complete Works, I can't confirm if the tweak to it in Mega Man 2 is like the first game or the fourth, but you can take an educated guess and say that all the games in the remasters made the hitboxes consistent with each other. Now, notice how in the original game, the air shooters whiff through Mega Man's helmet. Just ignore the sprite flickering because that doesn't affect the hitboxes. Anyway, they're not supposed to whiff like that, so Complete Works fixed the hitboxes, as evident from you taking damage. But I already know what you're thinking, and just be patient and let me explain first. Yes, this means you can no longer allow those twisters to whiff, but that was never the correct way to dodge those to begin with. You have to jump over the last 2 twisters with the aid of the wind, like this. The original strategy exploits Mega's tiny hitbox. If you still don't believe me, take a look at Quick Man stage. Another complaint about Complete Works in Mega Man 2 specifically was that the left side of the third force beam room is impassable. I say that in quote, because of the force beams allegedly having a larger hurt box. This is painfully false. If that were the case, then this stage itself would be impossible, since many force beams are like booty cheek clenching tight to pass. The reason why you die from falling to the left in Complete Works is because the hitbox correction on Mega. But it's also false that this is impassable. Something that Mega Man 2 itself never did explain is that for some godforsaken reason, Mega is pulled slightly up or down upon spawning into the next screen transition, depending on how you entered the screen. If you just fall from the platform, Mega Man will be pulled slightly up before dropping. If you jump into the next screen, he'll be pushed down a few pixels before dropping. This theoretically happens in horizontal transitions as well, but that's irrelevant. Because of Mega's itty bitty hitbox in the original game, the force beam just whiffed anyway regardless of how you transitioned. But because Complete Works corrected the hitbox to be more consistent with the other games, you die when you fall from the platform. You can definitely fault Complete Works for not making this transparent, however. Hold up, before I continue, I had to cut a bit of my script out here because I tested this in the original game, and this transition is actually a glitch from Complete Works. So yeah, you could consider that a strike against Complete Works there, so I'll definitely take an L on that one too. But this shouldn't affect the next part of the script, so I'm just bringing this up now, so I won't have to worry about explaining myself later. But this is the pettiest nitpick in the video. Just jump from the platform to push Mega down a few pixels. There. Problem solved. If you're worried about making the Airman fight in particular harder, no, it's just an extra jump. Airman does not have a single undodgeable pattern, contrary to popular belief, and Complete Works does not change that fact. I figured that would have been common knowledge at this point, but people still believe that Airman has an undodgeable pattern. But anyway, the only thing that you'd reasonably have to worry about in a fight like his is, ironically, the most important section of this video. Input lag. Let's debunk something right now. Natively, on the PS2, GameCube, or Xbox, plugged into a standard CRT TV, or what I like to call the big booty TVs, input lag simply does not exist in this collection. Or if it does, it's so minuscule that you would have to actively go out of your way to count the frames of delay in slow motion. You have to remember that this was back in 2004, and that console generation was optimized for standard television. In the advent of widescreen technology and high refresh rate monitors, this never transmitted well to perfect latency of older hardware in games, even to current day. Even the legacy collections don't have perfect latency. God, especially on a Nintendo Switch. But the delay is so small that anyone can adjust to it in no time, and without even realizing the lag's there unless someone told you. The PS2 Anniversary Collection is, in my opinion, the better version of the 3, but since the PS2 also aged the worst of the big 3 when it came to latency, the super noticeable input lag really stained its reputation. As someone who can personally vouch for this, I used to play the PS2 collection with no input lag on my old TV back in my teenage days. Now, it's unplayable on my current TV. People say to try game mode on your TV, but look, that's not a very reliable solution since all TVs vary in specs and whatnot. Game mode never worked for me regardless of the TV I had, but apparently it worked for some people, so it really just depends. So that leads to the main event. I refuse to allow the better version of the Anniversary Collection to fade into obscurity because of this, so I slaved away to optimize the emulation settings on the PCSX2 emulator, and to great success. As of now, with the most up-to-date version of the emulator in the nightly build, PS2 Anniversary runs just about as flawlessly as it did on a CRT TV. Maybe not 100%, like 95% to accuracy, but I digress. I'm going to be preemptive about this one before I start sharing the settings because there's been this perpetual debate on the morality of emulation on the internet for years. Look, an emulator itself is perfectly legal. How you obtain the ISO and ROMs or whatever, that's where the gray area falls. For today's video, if you legally own PS2 copy of the Anniversary Collection, you can do whatever the hell you want with the disc. Extract the files, burn the files on a different disc, whatever. So long as you're using it for personal use, you're fine. So please, do your due diligence and be responsible with your copy. Use Google to properly research how to set up the emulator and all of that good stuff, and do so within legal bounds. Then you can enjoy the perks of emulation. Don't ask me how to get the ISO files or BIOS files for the emulator or any of that stuff because I legally can't. You have to get all of that on your own. Thankfully, this game is dirt cheap on Amazon last I checked, which makes it more affordable than the complete works. Anyways, this was a roller coaster to figure out. Admittedly, 80% of the labor was me fumbling in the older version of the stable build of PCSX2, and to no avail. Imagine my rage bubbling to the surface as I realized the most recent nightly build of the apparent upcoming new version not only had more tools, but it innately improved the game input lag. So those several weeks of tinkering and research was meaningless. As annoyed as I was subsequently joyed. That meant getting the right settings became that much easier because I didn't need to tinker around with it too much more. So I'll make sharing these settings as simple and foolproof as possible. All I ask for you is to pay close attention as it's really hard to mess this up. If you just copy the settings you'll see on screen as I direct you, you shouldn't have any issues. This is me assuming you've already got the emulator and stuff set up. There's plenty of tutorials on YouTube that'll do that for you. I won't waste any time here with the basics since this video is long enough as is. Another thing that I have to mention is that depending on the power of your PC, this may or may not even be applicable to you. Though the good news is that since Anniversary Collection isn't a new game or anything like that, you won't necessarily run into too many issues setting this up, unless you're just running like a freaking toaster build from like 2012 or something. Most pre-built machines bought off of the market should have high enough specs to handle the emulator, so yeah, you should be fine on that front. And I'm specifically referring to PCs that are optimized for gaming. I'm not talking about like your $200 machines that you're meant to do homework and stuff on. But yeah, if you have any kind of modern era PC, you should be able to handle this just fine. The settings that I'm about to share is pretty friendly to low-end PCs as well, so yeah, we should be good on that front. But I'm just giving you that disclaimer because it might not work for everyone depending on your PC. Alright, so first things first, go to the PCX2 website and do not, and I repeat, do not get latest stable, because latest nightly is what we'll be using for this video. They even say it themselves that you should use the nightly instead. This one is updated regularly, and I mean regularly by like every day. So depending on when you click on this, it'll be a different version, but it doesn't really matter. So yeah, get the nightly. Before we start fiddling around with the settings to improve the lag, let's go to the audio tab. Now, select surround sound. It doesn't matter which one it is, either of these two. It will make the background music considerably better and more clear. Now, if you don't have surround sound on your computer, this might not work out too well for you. So just stick to stereo. But for the best results, definitely go for surround sound. Now, onto the graphics. Since I've been fiddling around with this so much, I don't even remember what the default settings are. But regardless, just copy and paste all of this stuff into your own emulator. And if VSync is checked For the love of God, please uncheck it. That's like a major proponent to this. And integer upscaling, that one's definitely important as well. Now, rendering, this one's important too. Keep it on native, because I know you want it to look as pretty as possible, but trust me, these games are already 240p, so if you just keep pushing it up higher, you're just going to create more problems, and the game's likely going to lag some more, because we are going to smooth that out with the texture filtering. Keep that on nearest, because that will make the game look much better. Bilinear PS2 is the recommended, but nearest is great for this game specifically. Like, if you're playing other PS2 games, you'll probably want to go for another option like that. But yeah, just like the other screen, copy and paste all of this. Texture replacement, you don't have to worry about this. And as well as this, just make sure everything is unchecked here. Just chiming in to say that on this particular page here, the filters and the sharpening may be pre-checked, and this was actually causing me a good deal of lag until I unchecked them. So yeah, make double sure that nothing on this page is checked, and everything else is just unimportant. And it's just that simple. So again, copy and paste all of this, and leave everything else alone. But yeah, if you toggle the right boxes and options, you should have a comfortable experience with this game. If there's still some pretty noticeable lag, it's probably hardware issues on your end. Make sure you're using a wired controller if wireless is giving you some latency. This is easily remedied by just plugging in your USB. And for the love of God, I said it before and I have to stress it again. Please do not forget to turn VSync off. Your graphics card can also be the culprit, but that's just something I can't help you with. Still, no matter what, you'll feel something if you're sensitive to the lag, regardless of those settings. But it's the same way with the Legacy Collection. I didn't even know the PC version had any lag until someone complained about it somewhere. Now that I know, I'm a bit more aware of the delay now. But I'm comfortable with it personally. I'm just happy to finally be able to play this baby again after so many years of just allowing it to collect dust on a shelf. It's not perfect, don't twist my words, I did not say anything like that. Emulation is just the best solution that we have right now to preserve this gem for the modern age. This was the definitive experience for the time, and no other collection brought complete works to the States like this. Now, I can totally understand if you don't want to waste your money on it. Megaman 7 and 8 getting done dirty the way they did is justification enough to write it off completely, if you feel that strongly about it. The Legacy Collection is objectively the better experience for those who wish to experience those modern releases raw as possible. Even though the Sega Saturn version is just objectively the better version of Mega Man 8, I wish they would freaking do that already. As far as stuff like the hitbox corrections, glitch fixes, and some of the zips in Mega Man 2 being absent, that's your prerogative if you value exploits over fixes. I can't tell you how to enjoy these games. Only you can decide that. I'm just an educator, and whatever you do with this information, that's on you. But if you want to step out of your comfort zone and experience a different way to play, just take that leap and try it out. You'll never know how to feel about it otherwise, because reviewers did this game pretty dirty back in the day, I have to admit that. But yeah, just keep this video in mind and make your own judgment call based off of it, because it's nostalgia that helps me value the Anniversary Collection over the Legacy Collection. So going by my word alone is unwise. Personal experience is what matters the most, not my experience or anyone else's.